G'day and welcome back to Critical AFL on YouTube for the latest trade update in the lead up to the AFL Grand Final this weekend, and then on to the AFL trade period shortly afterwards. For today's coverage, I'm going to start with all those key dates and then just push into what that means for us each step of the way, just to go with the current state of our likely trade targets and the capital that will come with that. Then finally, a quick summary of all those parts combined. So to begin with, the first date of significance doesn't actually come with a date, but it is expected to be announced sometime in the next week, which is our approved assistance package from the AFL. For those who need a quick refresher on this, West Coast requested AFL assistance in the form of a handful of picks and concessions. And from everything that we've heard so far, the concessions are likely to be receiving additional list spots for the rookies, anywhere between 2 and 4, while the pick is going to be either an end of first round pick this year or more likely, I think, an end of first round pick next year that needs to be traded or we lose it. So what these concessions mean is that the extra rookie list spots will allow us to bring in all of our next generation academy targets this year. I think there's at least 3 guys that we've got our eye on, and we can do that via match bids or even after the national draft if we're lucky, like we did with Malachi Champion. But most importantly, the extra spots means that we don't have to delist players to make room for them. So there'll be an impact from that one, and it kind of comes in 2 parts. The first one is just that it gives our waffle side depth. Not that that massively improves the AFL side, although I do think success helps. It just means that we don't have to dig into our non-AFL listed players as much in 2026, even when we have injuries. Which I think will be the beginning of the Waffle team really climbing the ladder a little bit next year. Just when you add that to the development of all our young draftees who have already gotten on our list and are outside the 23 having another year under their belt. But secondly, I think this is the intent of the assistance package is it gives West Coast more time to unearth long-term talent from our NGA program without delisting guys already on the list that may not have actually shown much yet. Just for example, Tyrell Juar this year, he's been in our system for a few years and he's a perfect example of the NGA program holding just a few gems in it that we couldn't really find straight away, but if we're patient with, you can unearth. Then to the pick, I think if it is that expected future first rounder to be traded, then this will very likely just be the capital that we directly bring in Brandon Starcevich with. That's just considering the offer we have presented. Apparently that's 6 years and it's also quite a lot of money. And also add to that what I've seen from watching him in the final series. I just think that would be a really big win for us bringing him in with assistance capital before even touching any of our current draft hands. So I'd be more than happy with that. On the other hand, if it is just the simple end of first round pick this year, meaning we can spend it ourselves, it's also possible, I think, that we might just bundle up some of our later picks, including what we received for, say, Campbell Chesser and Liam Ryan, and package that for Starcevich, just because I know Brisbane do have academy players right at the top end of this draft, Dan Annabelle. And then we can just add that first rounder to our already strong hand in this year's draft and use it. I'll make sure I put together a full picture, though, of these options once I get to the end of this video. The next date in the calendar is the free agency period, which starts Friday on the 3rd of October. So that's Friday week. Obviously, our involvement at that stage is just going to be the movement of Oscar Allen to Brisbane and then the pick 2 compensation that we receive in return for this move. I think it's pretty much been all but confirmed that Brandon Starcevich won't be coming across to us through this mechanism, despite him being a free agent, just for all the obvious reasons that we really value pick 2 for Allen. And it is almost pretty much confirmed the AFL isn't going to make any exemptions for us under that system. So we will need to trade for him if we want him, which I think we'll do. And like I just mentioned earlier, that could probably involve part of their assistance package picks anyway. Third, the next key date is the AFL trade period starting Monday, the 6th of October. So that's the Monday after free agency begins, which is a deliberate overlap so that teams can make decisions and use some of the capital they get in return for compensation. For West Coast, this is really where I think the beginning of our off-season should get exciting because it's the first part where all of our unknowns can turn into reality. Just based on the rumours going around, some of the players we've been linked to for this period include Brandon Starcevich. Obviously, I'm just going to go down the list in order of most likely, and he is the top of that. Also, Devon Robertson, Tyler Young from Richmond, And then guys like Judd McVie and Sam Butler aren't completely off our radar also at this stage. So starting at number one, that's Brandon Starcevic. I've pretty much already covered this basically. I think it's looking highly likely that he comes across to West Coast. And then if he does, it's either going to be for that first round future pick from our assistance package that has not yet been approved, or maybe a bundled set of later picks that help Brisbane pick up Dan Annabelle at the top end of this year's draft. The next bloke, Devon Robinson, also a Brisbane Lion. Before I think anyone gets stuck into him, I think it's worth pointing out that he's currently being held out of the best list of midfielders in the entire competition. And he'll also come to us for nothing compared to what he might have cost us 2 years ago. And then also on a personal note, I don't think it's anything but a credit to his character anyway that he chose to stay at Brisbane over coming to us the last time we tried. So yeah, he's out of contract. He'll be a bargain, and I think he'll make a difference in our young midfielder. So we could definitely do with him, and it doesn't look like there's much reason to stay at Brisbane anymore. Number three, Tyler Young. It's a bit of a new development for me, and I think really good news for West Coast because he's an experienced defender who we're really in short. The defenders in general actually are really in short supply across the competition right now, and then especially at West Coast after the loss of Tom Barras and Jeremy McGovern over the last 12 months. I don't think he'll cost much, so we're probably likely to see him come across for something in the range of what we gain for either Liam Ryan or Campbell Chesser, probably the latter of those two picks, whichever's further down the order, I'd imagine. I can't really confirm if he's a certainty, but he's at the higher end of my likelihood just behind Starcevic and Robertson. But then after those three, I think we're more in neutral territory for the likelihood of the rest of the guys linked to us. So the first, like I said earlier, is Judd McVie, who would be an ideal player to bring across if it happens. He's out of contract. He still hasn't re-signed with Melbourne with the trade period looming. And remember, they're not in finals either, so he could have by now. And he has been linked to both WA sides. So I did mention him in my last video. And like I said then, he's a future gun. He's a speedy rebounding halfback who's already proven heaps at 22. So he'd be a really good mix of immediate impact as well as a long-term pickup for us. Again, the next one, Sam Butler, he hasn't been taken off our radar just yet, but some of the rumours I've heard since he was initially linked to us is that Hawthorn have put a decent amount of interest in front of him to keep him from going. From what I can tell, it sounds like he's just more likely to stay there than come to us right now, but he's definitely not ruled out. And like McVie, he's the perfect combination of talent and age to suit our rebuild by offering that immediate impact and long-term value. Our outgoing players, by the way, Liam Ryan and Campbell Chesser, they're going to generate picks probably in the second round each. Chesser's value's already been associated with Carlton's second rounder from Brisbane. Unfortunately, with Brisbane, well, I'm going for Brisbane, but that pick hasn't quite settled until after the grand final, and it could slide to potentially the very end of that second round. And then that brings me to the next piece of the puzzle, and it'll be a bit of a wait before that, which is the national draft in late November across the 19th and the 20th of November, where the first round and then the rest of the draft is run on that second day. I think this will also be a really satisfying date for all of us West Coast fans as well, just with a strong draft hand that we'll be bringing into it. It sounds, especially, it gets reiterated every week, like our decision with picks 1 and 2 has almost been made a certainty. Same as what I said in the last video, the two players that we're expected to take are Cooper Duff-Tytler and Willem Dersma, whichever order that you prefer to put those two in. I think currently Kaltumi's got Dersma at the top of that order, but really makes no difference, like I keep saying. But what really excites me about this combo is how much they've both proven at the end of this year, which I think a lot of it reflects their ability to play in a mature age competition as opposed to against other Colts. So Cooper Duff-Tytler, in particular, posted some really promising numbers in the VFL already. He played up forward, kicking multiple goals for Essendon, but he's still got that profile for winning ruck taps as well as racking midfield possession numbers, which is the most important thing for me when I picture us picking up our next ruckman, especially with the future of the game moving away from boundary throw-ins across the middle of the ground. So having a ruck who plays the midfield game will be more valuable than ever as opposed to those bulls that like to, muscle in at stoppages. Obviously, that doesn't change ball ups, but it still increases the value of those mobile rucks more. Dersma has continued to prove that he will be a star among adults in the AFL just by having the big impact in the VFL late in the year. which can sometimes be a question mark on top tier under 18s. I know that there's a few top 10 picks who have fallen by the wayside once you put them amongst adults. The utility title continues to stick. So while he's been really impressive as a mid, he does offer West Coast the ability just to bring him into the side in round one next year, just in one of those safer positions at either end of the ground that new draftees often have to use to just, cut their teeth on. And then after those picks, we'll also have, like I mentioned, Hawthorn's first rounder, which is now settled at pick 15 after they got knocked out. But that will be pushed into the 20s, like I mentioned last video, just after all the matched bids and compensation that comes before. Then we also have the first pick of the second round. So technically that's pick 19, but that'll also push itself probably back to pick 30 again this year, like it was last year. There's also Hawthorn's second rounder, which is pick 33. That will also slide. And then finally, we have Hawthorn's third rounder, which is pick 51. And just looking at the way those later picks move, once all the bidding picks are used, it'll probably sit where it is, or maybe even come in just a little after all the bidding picks. Like I said, they magically disappear once they've been used. Like I said, when it comes to our picks for exiting players, we'll probably break even just using them on some of the trade targets that we're bringing in. So that really only leaves the question mark over how we pick up our father-son and NGA prospects. Either do we use our later picks by matching bids late in the draft, or do we pick some of them up in the rookie draft immediately after the national draft, which is basically a freebie, and that's what we did with Malachi Champion last year. For those wondering, by the way, the players in this category include Charlie Banfield. That's the son of Drew Banfield, who played really well in the WA under-18 squad. I remember watching a really good game from him against Vic Country. And he's also looked good in our Waffle side just for the one appearance that he made with them during the year. It was right at the end. There's also Wes Wally, Tyler Williams, and Kobe Evans, who are all part of that Next Generation Academy. I might give these guys a separate video when I put together my draft-only content. It's probably going to be on the other side of all the trade period, because there's a big gap between the trade period and the draft. But in the meantime, the only thing left, I think, is really a concise overview of all those moving parts that I've covered in this video. So I'll give it a try. So based on everything I've covered, I think we are likely to bring in Brandon Starcevic, Devin Robinson, and Tyler Young, while we will know in the next couple of weeks if we're a genuine chance to lure some of those, I think, bigger future prospects like Judd McVie or Sam Butler across too. Obviously, the exits will be Oscar Allen, Liam Ryan, and the very disappointing loss of Campbell Chesser before that draft, where we will almost certainly be taking Cooper Duff-Tidler and Willem Dersba at the beginning of the draft, and we'll possibly bring in our 3 NGA prospects after that draft, meaning that we can use all of our picks on new talent that we don't know. Hopefully there'll be a handful of new names added that we don't even know about until draft night or outside of those, which hopefully covers just about everything there is to know as a West Coast fan at this point in time. For anybody still watching who isn't already a subscriber, can you please consider hitting that subscribe button for future content? And then other than that, I hope everyone enjoyed the update and is looking forward to the grand final this weekend and then the business end of the season afterwards. I'll see you all again for those key periods, and cheers until then.